Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to The Last Symptom Monday live stream, the first one for the new year, 2025. Here we are. I see I've got some folks in here with me. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Get on in here. We've got lots of good things to talk about, I hope. Hope you guys have brought some things to talk about. Let's talk about the new year and about what you've all got planned for the new year, your hopes and dreams and aspirations. And maybe I'll share some of my own with you. The way we do this is for the first 30 minutes or about the first half, 25 minutes or so. It's open to everybody. And then the second half, when we talk about the really scandalous things, we close her down, and then the conversation is available only to supporters on Locals. And if you'd like to know how to join us on Locals, hello, Alicia. Alicia wishes everybody a happy new year. Carrie, also, you guys, I hope you came with ready to talk about all of your dreams and aspirations and hopes for the new year. You want to lose weight? Do you want to learn a language? Do you want to get healthy? Want to stay healthy? Get healthier? What do you guys got planned? I'll tell you some of mine. I want to talk today a little bit about the Emotional-Health Teeter-Totter. We ain't talked about it for a while. And this is a post that I put on our group at one point. I'll show you a picture of it. See if I can get that in there. You see, I've got a picture of a teeter-totter, and I've got it divided into three different things: immodest extremes, permissiveness, and then healthy balance. So I thought we would revisit that today. Carrie started a 3-day fast last night. Tell me about that. I hear a lot of people doing this fasting, and I know that people have done it throughout all of the history of mankind. But tell me a little bit about fasting and what you like about that, or what you don't like about it, or why fasting is your go-to approach. I have a friend. His name's Seth, and he fully believes in fasting, and he'll fast several times throughout the year. I was just talking to him a couple days ago. He said he'd just come off an 80-hour water fast. Oh my God! I don't even know how you do that. Have any of you ever done a water fast before? I also need to lose weight. I'm not as heavy as I was this time last year, so I'm not working as high a weight, but I've got good plans to drop some pounds. So let me see if I understand this correctly, Carrie. You're not just fasting by yourself. You've joined a group of people who are doing it all together. Hello, Ana. Feliz Año Nuevo, Ana says. We're talking about our dreams and aspirations for the year 2025, Ana. You got anything lined up? Any big achievements you'd like that you're striving for? Right now we're talking about weight. An interpreter, she used to be my boss, actually, when I worked in Philly. She's from Spain, so she's Spanish. And she's gotten in touch with me here in the past couple of years, just out of the blue. And we touch base every once in a while. And I said, do you have any big plans for the new year? She said, I've got the same plans everybody's got. I want to lose weight. Anna made a vision board. Carrie says that she needs support. It's hard to do by herself. I think it's a great idea to do that as a group. In the past, I just started today. So I have been on vacation. I didn't start on January 1st because it wasn't a good time for me to start. Can't start a diet or anything like that while I'm traveling. It's impossible. But so I always start the Monday after I get back from vacation. And I've started. If you guys are interested in joining me, anybody watching this, if you'd like to get on board and we could do check-ins every day on locals, um, then I'd be happy to do that. Y'all let me know. I'll tell you what I'm doing. It's primarily a diet. I'm only eating 3 meals a day in moderation. I'm focusing on protein, vegetables, and fruit. I'm going to do workouts, free weights, on Monday nights, Wednesday nights, and Friday nights. And on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, I'm gonna walk. So I'm gonna walk those 2 evenings after supper. Prefers exercise, not dieting. Yeah, it's awfully hard to, when I was in my 20s, I would run. We called it jogging back then. Back in those olden times, before the automobile and the telephone. When we didn't run, we called it jogging. It's probably a term you've never heard before because people don't use it no more. But we called it jogging. Now they just say they run. But I did a lot of jogging. I'd run up to like a local track, and then I would run this track for an hour and a half every day with the idea that I could then eat whatever I wanted to. Well, that's an awful lot of work. That's an awful lot of work. And I've read that in order to lose any significant amount of weight just with exercise or running, basically you'd have to be doing it all day long. So much simpler for me to just control how much goes in. And I tell you, the thing that's really hard on me is booze, hooch. I really like my Kentucky bourbon, and so that's got to go. I won't be drinking for the next at least 6 months or so. And so, in the lead up, of course, I was knocking them back. Tell us about this vision board, Anna. What is a vision board? Maybe others would like to be inspired by that and do something similar. No, no drinking at all for a while. Eventually, maybe 2, 3 months in, I may allow myself to have a drink here or there if a buddy comes over. But it's just a glass of bourbon, like one glass of bourbon, is has as many calories as like 2 Big Mac sandwiches from McDonald's. So think about that. And I never just drink one glass of bourbon. Usually I have like 3 or 4 glasses of bourbon. So think about that. That's like 8 Big Macs from McDonald's every time I uncork a bottle to have a drink. Just empty calories. So, as much as I love it, I'm giving it up for a few months. Waiting for Anna to tell us about this vision board. While she's doing that, let's talk a little bit about emotional health and this emotional health teeter-totter. Some people call teeter-totters seesaws. Where I grew up, we call them teeter-totters. I always think of permissiveness and self-compassion in terms of a teeter-totter. You know what it is? It's like if one kid sits on one side of the teeter-totter, another kid sits on the other, and they do this. Carrie says, I tried to give up alcohol for the whole last year. I may have broken that about 5 times. Going to try again this year. My mom made it the whole last year. Yeah, it's from what I hear, Matthew McConaughey, the actor. I was reading about him dieting for a role, and the interviewer said, "So what kind of diet were you on?" And it was a reasonable diet, but one thing that caught my attention, he said I could have all the wine I wanted. I was allowed to drink as much wine as I wanted to drink. And he lost a lot of weight for that role. It was the one where he played the guy with AIDS, who's like a um, rodeo star or something, and he gets AIDS. He lost a lot of weight for that role. He said for his diet for that, while he was losing weight for that role, the diet allowed for him to drink as much wine as he wanted to. And I think that wine has a lot of health benefits. So if I were going to cheat in the next few months, it would be maybe a glass of wine with supper. But that's it. Anyway, back to the emotional health teeter-totter. When we're unhealthy, which stems from confusion about the nature of worth, how worth works, we tend to be awfully hard on ourselves. In fact, we have lifetimes of being unreasonably hard and critical on ourselves. And then we start realizing the source of our problems, and we begin down this road of emotional health recovery. And a lot of emotional health recovery involves things that we're not used to giving ourselves. Things like compassion, things like patience, things like love, understanding. Compassion is a word that I really like. And that was something that I really began doing for myself early on in my recovery. I began to every day try to practice compassion with myself. But then the kind of critical, negative views of ourselves begin to re-exert control, right? And the question in our minds might be, is it right when I do something so terrible? Is it right for me to show compassion to myself? Is it right to show patience for myself? For example, when I lose my temper and I treat somebody in just the most ugly ways. Is it right for me to be understanding and kind to myself when I do things, I act out in ways that are so ugly? And so that's where the emotional health teeter-totter comes into play. And I always thought of it this way. If I'm too critical of myself and not forgiving enough, not patient enough, not understanding enough, not compassionate enough with myself, then that teeter-totter's leaned way like this. So it's all expectation and demand of myself, critical thinking, holding myself to these very firm expectations. And the teeter-totter is tilted real far like this. That's when I'm being way too critical, way too demanding of myself. But then on the other hand, what if I'm too compassionate and too understanding and too um, willing to overlook serious things? Well, then the teeter-totter tips completely in the other direction. And that's not good either. So I call this when when the balance is off and a person is all about being critical, demanding in their expectations and everything, and that balance is off. I call that unhealthy permissiveness. It's an immodest extreme. Why is it immodest? It's immodest because it doesn't take into account people's true limits. So since we're talking about diets, think about it like this. Think about expecting yourself to lose 50 pounds by tomorrow morning. Why is that immodest? Because it's not within any human being's ability to do that. I mean, unless you get like amputated from the waist down, it's not within a person's capability. Remember, modesty deals with limits, recognizing limits, true limits, being content to work within those limits. So in a diet, then you don't say, well, I expect myself to lose 50 pounds tomorrow. That's completely immodest. The modest thing to do is to say, well, what's reasonable, what I can reasonably do with my schedule and me being somebody who has to eat, right? I have to eat. What I can do is I can give myself 3 meals a day. I can eat at this time, this time, this time. I can cut my calories down, and I can have an expectation of losing, let's say, 10 pounds within a month. Much more reasonable, right? Well, now we're bringing that teeter-totter a little bit more into balance. Emotional health, so much of it involves balance. Now, what would be like the other extreme? The other extreme would be like, you know, I sure do like everything that I'm eating. I like the quantities that I'm eating. I like not exercising. What I'd like to do is maybe lose 1 pound by the end of the year. See, that's an example of being way too permissive. You're capable of more than that. And if it's for your health, well, then it's something reasonable to expect of yourself, right? To lose a certain amount of weight. So where's the healthy balance? The healthy balance is in our expectations never outweighing our compassion, reasonableness, patience, and those sorts of things. There should be a perfect balance. So the amount of compassion we give ourselves is the amount of expectations that we're also giving ourselves. The amount of understanding and did I say patience already? Patience or compassion should be equal to the amount of expectations we're heaping on ourselves. Permissiveness isn't good, but neither is unreasonable demands on ourselves. That's also not good. So again, I'll show this picture here. This is the way I drew it out several years ago. I think the copyright down at the bottom is 2022. And I just used it like a teeter-totter diagram. It might be good for you if you find yourself too demanding of yourself, too critical of yourself, to maybe sit down and draw out your own teeter-totter diagram. Draw it so that it's unreasonable this way, and it's unreasonable this way, and then draw one that's balanced, and then put what you think that balance is. Carrie says, too hard and critical of myself. You know, we grew up that way. We grew up that way. We saw the people around us being that way to themselves, being that way to others, and of course we adopted that for ourselves. You might remember not too long ago I was talking about sports. So in sports, if you're doing, let's say baseball. Let's say that you're a pitcher for a Major League Baseball team. and you stink. Your pitching is terrible. It's all over the place. It stinks. You got no control. You're not pitching at the speed you're capable of. Well, how do you fix that? Let's say that you're the coach of that pitcher. How do you fix that? You go to him and you say, "Listen, you stink. You're pitching terrible." That works in sports. It doesn't work when it comes to our emotional health and our recovery. Why not? Why does it work in sports but not in emotional health recovery? It works in sports because the person is not working with the premise that he's worthless. Those of us who are here, in most cases, that is the premise we've been working with for our whole lives. Now, here in Last Symptom, you're learning to get away from that thinking. It doesn't work when you already think you're worthless. Because when somebody comes and says, "Listen, you suck, you stink," that hurts and you might get upset. But deep down, you know what you're saying to yourself? He's right. He's telling me something I already believe. I stink, I'm terrible. Of course. You're just telling me something I already believe. I've lived my whole life believing that. So what are you motivated to do then when somebody points out that you stink at something? You're not motivated to do anything. That's the interesting thing about emotional health recovery compared to like sports, where you go up to the pitcher and you say, "Man, you stink and you're going to get kicked off the team if you don't do better." See, for the sportsman or the sports lady, that approach motivates them to try harder. But when you take the same approach to somebody who thinks they're worthless, it doesn't motivate them to try harder. It motivates them to try even less. So the answer for somebody who has lived, let's say, a lifetime on this foundation that I'm worthless, it doesn't work. And think about the conversations you have with yourself. So you're you and you're also your coach. If you're sitting around having conversations with yourself that go like this, "Man, you stink. You're terrible. You're horrible at this." You're not being a very good coach. It's not constructive, because the only effect that has on a person who thinks that he or she is worthless is to try less. So what do? Well, unlike the pitcher in baseball, what you got to do, the type of conversation that you got to have with yourself has to go like this: "Brian, you failed. It's okay. It's all right. What can you learn from it? It's okay to fail from time to time. You're trying though, and that's what matters." See, for the baseball player, the professional baseball player who's pitching terribly, him trying isn't enough. He can't say to the coach, "But coach, I'm trying." Coach doesn't care if he's trying. What the coach cares is about results. Are you pitching well? That's what he cares about. Not whether, "Oh, you're giving it your best." You're giving it your best and you stink. So either you fix it or you're off the team. See, that's the way that works in sports. When we're having these conversations with ourselves, though, in recovery, the conversation cannot be that way for the reasons that I just described. Because the effect that that's going to have on you it's going to demoralize you more. It's going to disillusion you more. It's going to any uh, motivation that you've you know scrubbed up, it's going to be gone, because that approach does not work for people who already feel like they're worthless. So instead, you got to do the counterintuitive thing. When you do something really terrible, you make a terrible mistake, you act out, you blow up at somebody who doesn't deserve it. The conversation afterwards cannot be, "You're terrible. You stink. You're a rotten person." It can't be that. Instead, it has to be, it's okay. Forgive yourself for it. You're working on these things. It's not reasonable to expect that you will be a master at this yet. You got plenty of time to keep trying and figuring out what went wrong and trying again. So in that regard, emotional recovery is more like batting practice. So now we're going to use the baseball analogy again, but now we're not talking about a pitcher in a game. We're talking about you going to batting practice every morning. You know what the wonderful thing about batting practice is? You can't fail at batting practice, because failure is the whole point. What do I mean by that? Well, you don't know how to hold the bat different, how to stand closer in the batter's box, or how to swing harder or lower or higher until you fail. You depend on the failure to know what adjustments to make. And that's our lives. That's your and my lives in the situation that we're in as far as people who are interested in being healthy. It's all batting practice, meaning there are no failures. There are no failures. There are simply opportunities to learn and make an adjustment. That's it. So think about that the next time that you're really disappointed with yourself. Instead of, well, you got to be conscious first of all. When your internal dialogue goes into this self-loathing talk, you got to be conscious enough to know that that's happening. That you are having that, you are talking to yourself that way. You see, if you're not conscious about it, then it just goes on in the background. But I'll tell you how to know when to look for it. When you're feeling terrible. When you're feeling terrible about yourself. That is your cue to look in your brain and find out what things you're saying to yourself. Because I guarantee you are having a conversation with yourself in that moment. We all do it. When we mess up or we do something stupid, we all have a conversation with ourselves going on internally. And it's usually, you dope. You big dummy. So again, if you're not conscious of it, it just goes on. It goes on anyway. But if you're conscious about it, if you look inward and say, what sorts of things am I telling myself right now? Then you can recognize what you're saying to yourself. And if it's not constructive, then you can reject it. You can reject those messages. You can choose to talk to yourself in a different way. And the way that conversation should go is, this is batting practice. So this failure that I just experienced is my opportunity to know what adjustment I can make moving forward. And be very specific in your adjustments. So I had, we're about at 30 minutes. Before I tell this personal story, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. You folks on YouTube and on Rumble, I'm going to close her down. I'm sorry. I know you want to join her. You want to hear this story. It's one of the most scandalous stories you're ever going to hear. It's probably not even going to be allowed on the internet. But if you want to hear it, you could join us on our locals group, thelastsymptom.locals.com in your web browser, or you can run over to the App Store, download the locals.com app from the App Store, and then join us that way. By the way, Last Symptom has a new logo. If you ain't seen it, you can see it on wherever Last Symptom is, YouTube. I don't think I've got it up on Rumble yet. thelastsymptom.com. It's up at thelastsymptom.com. So we're going to shut her down now and just go to locals only, and then I'll tell this story about this failure I had here recently. Here we go.